UFC 318 right around the corner. We're here to break down the card, give our predictions. Today I'm joined by Luke and San. Fellas, how we doing tonight?
Doing great. Let's get in it.
Living the dream.
Awesome. We're just going to get right into this card. And to start us off, we have a low-level women's MMA fight. We have Carly Judis versus Nicole Caliari here, the United States woman versus the Brazilian. Luke, I know we touched on talking about these women MMA fights to start cards, so it's only fitting that you kick us off here.
Yeah, two fighters I'm not too familiar with. When I was doing some research into this fight, I really just looking at the odds, and it came into my attention that I always bet the favorite the first women's fight. So I'm definitely going the underdog here. I'm going Nicole here. I think she has better grappling overall. I think her opponent's a good kickboxer, but I think the Brazilian power is going to be on display, and she's going to win a UD in this fight to start off the card. I don't know what the line is now. It's 215 on Tapology. So starting off with a bang, underdog pick.
Yeah, we got a heater here. Definitely tuning in for this one. I think I'm going Carly Judis here. I think that especially in women's MMA, the height and the reach difference really kind of take you a lot longer way than in the men's divisions. I think just having that physical advantage is going to push her over the edge. Plus, she is the favorite. I think for right reasons, a little bit younger. Not that I think we've touched on this before. Women fighters don't really experience that age drop off as much as men fighters do. But I do think Carly's looking good. Her reach and height advantage are probably gonna just give her that edge that she needs. So yeah, I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Carly's looking good. Yeah, I agree. I think the height and reach play into this a lot. Sorry.
Get a grip, brother.
It's not even that funny, dude. That's the worst part.
Dude, we're cooked, bro. We're cooked. Podcast off to a start, bro.
No, the height and reach, I think, will play a big part. She definitely is the better striker here compared to Nicole. Nicole, better grappler, no doubt there. But I think if Carly is able to fend off those takedowns, being longer, being able to control distance will play a big part in that. And if she's able to keep this on the feet, I see her kind of cruising to a UD here and just outstriking her. And yeah, enough said there. Let's move on. Next up, we have a middleweight bout between Bruno Ferrer and Jackson McVey. McVey making his UFC debut. He was supposed to fight Cedric Dumas a week or two ago, and that got canceled due to Cedric Dumas not being able to get his ankle monitor off. So they had to rebook him on short time. Bruno Ferrer steps in here. Interesting fight. Ferrer is a pretty sizable favorite. Son, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's too much to say about this one. Obviously, Bruno's been on an absolute heater since that Abu Magomedov submission loss. What is he on, a 3-fight win streak? Yeah, so he's been doing really good. I think he's red hot right now. I just don't think Jackson McVey is enough. I mean, he's 6-0 right now. He's about to get, in my opinion, his first loss of his career. And to a really good opponent too. I don't think he should hang his head on it. And yeah, there's not much else to say. I think Bruno's just kind of shown what he's about and how well he is. Definitely a big drop down from competition. Had it been Ikram Aliskerov, that was going to be a really good test for him. But nonetheless, keep the kid hot, tune-up fight, make sure he's still ready to fight maybe later this year. And yeah, I got Bruno here.
Yes, Son, I'm right there with you. I do think Jackson McVey is going to be a great prospect, obviously undefeated on the professional level. And I think we kind of hit on it. Like, he went from being a huge favorite in his last fight that got canceled to a huge underdog. I think he is live just because of the size. He's 6'4" to Bruno's 5'10" and has a 5-inch reach advantage. But I think the experience in the UFC for Bruno is just going to play a huge part here. Like you said, he's got just had a sub armbar against Petrosian, has a good win against Phil Hawes. I think the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is going to come out here. I could see it I could see him knocking him out because I do think he has more power, but I think it's going to end up being a submission here. So I'm taking Bruno here by submission.
Yeah, it's kind of tough because I don't think any of us really know how good Jackson McVey is or could be. And for all we know, like, he could be a very good up and coming prospect and whatnot. But I just have to side with the guy who has more experience, who has some solid wins in the UFC, and who I know is not a can per se. And Bruno Ferrer is a pretty solid fighter. Nothing, nothing crazy. Nothing really jumps out at me too much. But he's a guy who I know is going to go in there. He's going to compete, and I feel fairly confident siding here with Bruno Ferrer. But I don't know. Maybe Jackson McVey can pull off the upset. I wouldn't mind seeing it, to be completely honest. And moving on, we have a heavyweight bout between Ryan Spann and Lucas Breski. Breski, in my opinion, is just a pretty low level fighter in this heavyweight division. Like a lot of them are, but I think he's even on the lower end of the lower end guys here. And while I'm not very high on Ryan Spann, I do think Ryan Spann could potentially land something big here against Lucas Breski. I don't think Lucas Breski has the best chin. I think his only win in the UFC is coming against Walter Walker, who I know is on that heel hook run right now, but kind of speaks volume there. So I guess I'll really start us off here because I'm already on it. My pick's going to be Ryan Spann, but Luke, I'll kick this one over to you.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Zach. I think you kind of hit on it. Kind of the bottom of the heavyweight division. Both guys 1-4 in their last 5. Obviously, that Walker win is big for Breski, but I don't put too much weight on that. I think Walker really has hit his stride since then, as you touched on. I think Ryan Spann's just the more athletic and a little bit more technical of a fighter. Breski's very much like a brawler. I think the athleticism is going to show for Ryan Spann here. I got him by decision. I don't think he gets him out of here, but I think he puts on a good performance, gets back in the win column.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a sweep for all of us. Luca's just been like on a generational losing streak. You just kind of look through the record; it's just red all over. So, unfortunately, I don't see this being the fight he turns it around. It would be cool if he did, because I think this is very attainable for him. But I think Ryan Spann, I mean, he has at least won a few fights, in the last few years. So I'm going to side with him. It could be a banger. I mean, you never know. These fights sometimes these guys just kind of let the hands fly sometimes. So we could be in for a good one, but I don't have too much high hopes for this one. Definitely excited for the top half of this card.
Yeah, and moving on to
Is
the
that
light
bad?
heavyweight.
Sorry.
No,
No,
man.
it's pretty top heavy, this card.
Yeah, and even if we're going to talk about it at that point, I don't even think it's that crazy top heavy either. I think it's a pretty poor card put on by the UFC. It might be entertaining, but just from star power and namesake goes. But moving on to a light heavyweight bout here, we have Jimmy Crute taking on Marcin Prachnio. Two guys who, again, I'm not crazy high on. I feel like this has been kind of a common theme here thus far tonight. And with that being said, Son, I'll kind of just let you take the floor from here and give your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I'm going Jimmy Crute here. I remember calling out that last Bellato fight that he had. That was like one of my first fights on the podcast, I think. So I'm going to side with Jimmy. Familiar name here. Prachnio hasn't had, the best performances. And yeah, I mean, a draw with Bellato's kind of aged pretty well, honestly. Bellato's doing pretty well. I think he might have dropped his last one if I remember correctly. But yeah, he did. I mean, it was like a no contest. But I think he was a really good fighter, and I think that loss aged well. Not loss, but draw. So yeah, I'm going Jimmy Crute here. Not too much else to say. He's got a wicked mully. I'm hoping he brings it back this week. I haven't seen the hairstyle, so yeah, I'm hoping for the style points getting the win here.
Yes, I think this is very much like the fight prior, the Ryan Spann fight. It's kind of two guys on, kind of skidding in the UFC. And I think it's, a very normal like karate style from Prachnio to like the Jimmy Crute kind of just a dog wrestling, grappling heavy kind of guy. But I'm with you. I think Jimmy Crute gets this done. I think he gets back in the win column. Like you said, he's a slight favorite right now. But kind of not a household name, but maybe if you're a casual, you don't know him, but he's been on a lot of cards. The only thing that like when I was doing research is Prachnio has a decision win against Khalil Roundtree. And when I was looking at that, I was like, damn, that's kind of crazy. And then I remembered it was in 2021 on the Dustin McGregor card. So that was a while ago. That was before the resurgence of Khalil Roundtree. So I'm not putting that much weight on it. Yeah, I got Jimmy Crute here. I don't think either of these guys get each other out of there. This one's going to decision.
Yeah, I'm also going to side with Jimmy Crute here. I think just the grappling and wrestling upside just kind of puts me over the edge here. He does have a decent submission game as well. More versatile fighter. He's pretty durable as well. I mean, I know he has gotten knocked out a few times by like Jamal Hill, for example, but I don't know. I can see Jimmy Crute here putting on a pretty decent performance, and I'm going to side with Crute as well. And moving on to a welterweight bout, we have Adam Fugitt versus the model Islam Dulatov. I know you guys were talking pretty high on Dulatov going into the podcast pre-recording, and Luke, I think you were speaking on him as well. So I'll just let you take the floor from here and give your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I know we kind of talked about, his modeling career. I think that's kind of how he made his name in the Contender Series. Modeling career turned into, UFC fighter. Is Chechnyan, but fights out of Germany. Two, pretty tough countries to be from in terms of, warriors that come out of those countries. I think he's just like entertaining, man. He's a calm striker. He's got like this, I don't know, mentality about him that he picks his fights or picks his range, and he's a sniper. And I don't like Adam Fugitt. It's like he's just slower. He has decent striking, but is he really going to piece up the better striker who handles range really well? Probably not. I think this is a good fight. I think the line is huge. It's like minus 625 right now. So I'm riding with Islam here. I have him by KO. I think he gets it done in the second. I think this is the start of maybe a new prospect up and coming in the UFC.
Yeah, Dulatov is definitely an exciting guy. I'm definitely going to be tuning in for this one. I like the guy. I think he's cool. He's cool in the Contender Series. He has a pretty interesting career too. He's got a shit ton of finishes. I think all of his wins are by finish. And then he has a few fights in boxing as well, which is pretty interesting. Which kind of showcases how good he is on the striking. He's pretty sharp. But then he also has a pretty decent amount of submission wins. So I'm expecting something exciting for him this weekend. Hopefully, get him, closer to making a bigger name for himself out in the UFC. I think he's just a cool guy. Definitely cool with the modeling stuff. I think he's with like, Louis Vuitton, like those big designer brands, which is pretty dope. So I think that's just a character that you kind of want to have around the UFC. Someone you kind of want to see, how their story is going to develop. So pulling for Islam here. I don't think there's much doubt that he's winning this fight, especially with the odds here. But I'm hoping for something exciting.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Dulatov as well. I like siding with the up-and-coming prospects. Obviously, big favorite, crisp striker. I will say, though, like Adam Fugitt has faced some pretty tough competition. If you look at his losses, it's to Mike Mallet, who by no means is like a world beater, but he was like borderline kind of cranking into that top 15. He's a solid prospect. He might even be in the top 15 now. I'm not 100% sure. And if not, he's probably right outside of it. And his other loss comes to Michael Morales, who's just an absolute fucking tank. So there has been some solid fighters in there for Fugitt. I just don't see the plus 400 underdog really being too crazily competitive in this one. I know he can be all right, but yeah, I'm going to side with Dulatov. Potentially finds a finish in there. We shall see come Saturday night. And moving on, we have a fight that I'm actually very excited about. We have a middleweight bout between Aibaguatier and Robert Valentin, two exciting strikers. I will say Gatier hits like a fucking truck, and he's precise with his striking. Whereas Valentin, he also can be very crafty with his striking, but I don't see him really finding a way to outstrike Atiba on the feet here. In my eyes, the route to victory for Valentin would likely be some sort of submission threat, which I don't know if he will be able to find. And if he stays on the feet, I see him getting cracked at some point. San, I'll kick it over to you to give your insight on this one.
Yeah, definitely going Gautier here. He is like a baby Ngannou, also from Cameroon, actually, funny enough. But this dude does hit like a truck. I don't know what they're feeding those guys out in Cameroon, but those dudes, pack a fucking punch. This dude's a, knockout monster. This dude's knocking dudes out left and right. His only loss came in decision. So, you really got to put this guy out. If you really want to take him out, or you just got to outpace him. So I just don't see that happening. Robert Valentin, it's kind of, I'm just not too high on him. I know he's obviously a good fighter. He's in the UFC, but Gautier is a very exciting guy, and he's also 23, so pretty young guy, very shifty. He's gonna have a lot of energy. And if it does go to decision, I can still see Gautier winning this one, but I'm really hoping it doesn't because he's been on a crazy finish streak recently.
Yeah, I'm making a clean sweep here. I think you guys really hit on everything. Valentin, his path to victory is going to be grappling. Gutierrez he's just got the touch of death, man. And like just looking at his stats in terms of like height reach, 6'4", 81-inch reach, that's like huge. He's just built like a brick shit house. And I don't see him getting knocked out here. And also Valentin's 0-2 in the UFC. Yeah, I think this is kind of feeding him to the wolves here. I think the line's very much rightly aligned. So I'm going Gutierrez by KO.
Yeah, and dude, even that 0-2 in the UFC, it's not like he's faced really too tough of competition. You have like Ryan Loder in there, and then Torres Finney, who just like wrestle fucked him to a decision win. And yeah, I just think Katiba is just too big. I don't really see Valentin being able to bully him into takedowns, but I don't know. Maybe if he can pull guard and like can throw up some sort of triangle or something, he can catch him, maybe threaten an armbar. But outside of that, I do think he probably gets his lights put out. But moving on to there, we have a welterweight bout between Francisco Prado and Nicole Vertikinov. Again, a pretty fun fight here. I know this is one that you guys were talking about pre-podcast as well. I know you guys were kind of talking pretty decently about Francisco Prado, even though he is on that 2-fight skid against the likes of Daniel Zellhuber and Jake Matthews. So no scrubs there. But San, you can take the floor from here and let's hear your thoughts on this one. San? All right, Luke, over to you.
Yeah, I'm going Prado here. I didn't know too much about Prado. I don't even remember tuning into even the Zellhuber fight or the Jake Matthews fight, which I feel like are on cards I should remember, but I don't off the top. But as I was doing research, I think those 2 fights have aged like extremely well. I think this is just a great matchup for him. I think Nikolai is a good striker. I think he's a decent striker. I think Prado's just better in close. I think he lands those quick in close combinations really well. And the really deciding factor for me, I know the line's pretty close, is Prado's 23 to Nikolai being 35. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. Prado's a young guy who, has kind of been a name in, you hear about him. And he's only 23. Those 2 losses came to, kind of vets in the division. So I think this is a perfect fight for Francisco Prado. I got him winning this one. I don't think he gets him out of there. I think he'll go to decision, but I definitely have him winning here.
Yeah, was my connection messed up there? You guys all froze up on me.
Yeah, you turned into a ghost for a few seconds, so we kind of just moved on a little bit. But yeah, let's see your thoughts on this fight.
Yeah, we're back. We're on this fight, right? Yeah, well, I'm going with Prado here. Definitely a tough UFC career for both of these guys. I don't think, well, Prado has at least a win in the UFC. Other guys 0-2 though. A lot older, like you said, Luke. And Prado's really good when he gets up close. I don't know. I think the reach advantage probably goes to Veretinikov. But I think Prado's just going to be able to, get in there. He'll be a lot more shifty. He's younger. Big age gap here. Once you start hitting that 35 years old as a fighter, it kind of gets tough to move as fast as you did and, produce as much power as you used to. So I'm definitely going Prado here. Another young guy that's, pretty, I mean, like he's a young guy in the UFC. I mean, being 23 in the UFC is, no laughing matter. I mean, obviously he's super legit. So hoping he can get a win, get back in the win column here, and then maybe pick up a few things that he learned in his last few losses.
What sold it for me is Paige Van Zandt's OnlyFans boyfriend beat the piss out of Nikolai Veretinikov, however you pronounce it. And Francisco Prado is a young fighter who will be improving. And like I touched on earlier, he has faced some tough competition. I like to side with the side of youth here, 12 years younger. And again, Nikolai got fucked up by Austin Vanderford, who took that fight on short notice, I'm pretty sure. And that's kind of where I was like, all right, I'm drawing that line. I know you had a split with Danny Barlow, but I think Danny Barlow is supposed to be this good prospect who really just hasn't been yet. So, yeah, I'm siding with Prado as well. Let's make that a clean sweep.
Paige Van Zandt, that's a name I haven't heard in eons, man.
Yeah. Yeah, lovely woman there. But let's move on to a middleweight bout between Marvin Vettori and Brendan Allen. This is a rematch between when they just fought in the casino a few months ago and Brendan Allen bare knuckle fucking socked Marvin Vettori. And Vettori just ate it. Didn't go down. So now you're going to put him in the cage with gloves on while he's expecting to get hit. And I don't see Marvin Vettori going down. That guy has one hell of a chin. And this is a pretty interesting matchup here. Luke, I know you were touching on this one earlier, so I'll let you take it from here. The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I do like both of these guys. I didn't used to like Vettori. I kind of have gained like so much more respect for him really since that Izzy belt fight that he had. And when you look at when I first thought about it, I was like, oh, Vettori's seen so much better competition. I don't really know that's totally true. Brendan Allen's lost. He just lost to Nasruddin, and then he lost to Fluffy Hernandez. Like those are two of the top prospects in that division. I just think, like you said, Vettori's not getting knocked out. He tends to be. I definitely think Brendan Allen has the grappling advantage. Don't get me wrong, but Vettori's a hard guy to get to the ground, and he normally works his way to the cage and gets back up. I think in a 3-rounder, I think Vettori's hands are just gonna, allow him to, I don't think he hits maybe not as hard. He doesn't normally knock guys out, but he's a good volume puncher. He always seems to land the more significant strikes. There's just something in my gut telling me to go with the underdog here. I like Marvin Vettori here. I'm going Vettori by UD. I definitely don't think either of these guys get another out of there. They're not normally known for their knockouts. But I'm going the Italian dream here to get back in the win column.
Yeah, I really want to go Vettori here. He is young still. I mean, he's 31. And you would think he'd be older, with the guys that he's fighting and the kind of career and how long he's been in our face in the UFC. But I think I have to go Brendan Allen here. Obviously he lost a decision fight to Fluffy, which is pretty, impressive because Fluffy's just been submitting everybody. But his last win was against Chris Curtis, who's a very legit guy, and also a guy that I think could give Vettori trouble. So I'm, not to get in the MMA math here, but even surviving Nasruddin Imavov, I mean, it's pretty impressive. I'm going Brendan Allen here, definitely by decision. Not seeing a finish out of either of these two guys. Kind of hoping Vettori wins though, because just like I guess man law, I want him to get that lick back on him. It's definitely gonna be a lot more emotionally charged fight than it should have been. But yeah, I think for the sake of my pick, I'm going Brendan Allen.
Yeah, and one thing to know, Brendan Allen is fighting in his home state here of Louisiana. Whether that is for good or for bad, that could go either way there. But I don't know. Brendan Allen's a guy that I'm not really entirely sold on. I don't know where he beats Vettori. I also don't know if Vettori really has any major jump up in skill. I don't know if he has any major advantages over Brendan Allen as well. Both of them can kind of mix up the game pretty well. Both of them can take each other down. I will say, if you're looking at it from the pure statistical standpoint, Marvin Vettori does have better takedown accuracy, better takedown defense, more strikes landed per minute, less strikes absorbed per minute. So it's like, I don't really know. I think Vettori can pack a punch. I don't see Brendan Allen being able to put out Marvin Vettori, and I just like Vettori more. I'm gonna err on the side of Marvin Vettori in this one. And moving on, we have a pretty fun fight here as well. It should be fun for as long as it lasts, at least. We have Kyler Phillips taking on Vinicius Oliveira. Vinicius Oliveira is another fun fighter coming up. Yeah, son, I know you were talking about this one. It might have been Luke that was talking about this one, or both of you guys were saying Kyler Phillips is likely going to get put the fuck out. I know you had some fun words to say about it, so I'd like to hear more on your thoughts on this fight.
Yeah, I mean it's the UFC, not WWE. I don't think Seth Rollins is winning this one. Can't really script an MMA fight. And Vinicius Oliveira is a dog, dude. He's been on a really good streak. Obviously, some decisions in the last few, but getting a flying knee against Sopaj, that's pretty exciting. But also, beating Ricky Simon and Said Nurmagomedov, I think those are both, very good accolades for, where he's at in his UFC career. So I'm definitely going with him. I think he's a good guy that's, joined the UFC. And I'm really just hoping for a knockout here. He's an exciting guy. He's like not a guy that, like the previous fight, is going to go to decision. Obviously he's Brazilian too, so I got to side with my boy. I'm taking the Loke dog here.
Yes, I'm right there with you. I think the Pedro Munoz fight for Kyler Phillips is kind of what even gets him this fight. I don't know what the odds are currently, but he's a 155 dog here. I think that's outrageous. I think Oliveira is just, and this is no disrespect to Kyler Phillips. I think this is just too much, like too big of a bite. for him to chew off right here. I think Oliveira is better in every aspect of MMA. Kyler Phillips is no submission threat to Oliveira here. I think they stand and bang, and I think Oliveira's striking is, kind of unorthodox, but it's so clean. It's so fun to watch. Yeah, I think this is going to end in a knockout. I don't think it's going to end well for Kyler Phillips. I'm gonna play this line like today because I think it's going to sway as we get closer to Saturday. I got Oliveira by KO.
Yeah, I'm also going to side with Vinicius Oliveira here and make it a clean sweep. One thing to note, Vinicius Oliveira has been knocked out a few times, and when he has, it's been fairly early in fights. He seems like a guy who kind of picks up into the fight the longer it goes on and gets better and better. So if Kyler Phillips does want to win this fight, I think he needs to take out Vinicius Oliveira early, which is a possibility. But beside the point here, I'm also going Vinicius Oliveira for all the points you guys touched on. I think he's probably the better all-around fighter. He's a very fun fighter to watch, clean striker, and I'm a fan of his, so I'm going to side with Vinicius Oliveira. And moving on to the main card, we have a pretty fun fight here to open up the main card. We have Michael Johnson taking on Daniel Zellhuber. I think a lot of people have been pretty high on Zellhuber ever since his fight with Esteban Ribovics, that split decision. Super fun fight to watch. That was absolute fireworks, and the kid is just fucking good. Like, he has a handful of UFC wins. He's shown that he can fight everywhere. He can hit fucking hard. He's young. He's durable, and he's another guy that I think kind of picks up as the fight goes on. But beside the point, I'll let Luke take the floor from here and give his thoughts.
Yeah, I think you hit on it. My biggest thing with Zellhuber was that loss to Ribovic. Obviously, that was I think that was at the Sphere, right? That was a crazy fight. What a great fight. But I think the biggest thing for Zellhuber after that fight, obviously it went to decision. He was getting rocked in the end there and lost a split decision. But he took 9 months off, and he's 26 years old. I think that is like such a key thing for a young guy, especially a highly touted prospect, to take time off and get things right and learn where he went wrong and learn how to fight a 3-round fight to the very end and maybe get his hand raised if he fought that fight a little bit different in the 3rd round. But let's just look at it. Michael Johnson's 39 years old. Zellhuber's 26. Michael Johnson has a 73.5-inch reach. Zellhuber's 77. I think that tells the tale of how this is going to go. I don't think this is going to go to the ground. I think this is going to be a striking match. And yes, Michael Johnson, he knocked out Gaethje. He hit Khabib a couple of times back in the day that were, some of the bigger shots Khabib ate at that point of his career. But he's just old, man. He still has that knockout power. The power is the last thing to go, but it is fading a little bit. We've seen in the recent fights. I can't see him getting it done here. I think Zellhuber's a highly touted prospect for a reason, and even with that last loss, it's not going to deter me from that. I'm going Zellhuber here. Credit to Michael Johnson; he doesn't get knocked out a ton, so I will take it to decision. But I think Zellhuber gets his hand raised.
Yeah, I think the key word there is, back in the day when you were talking about Michael Johnson, he is very old. I mean, 39 is pretty crazy to still be in that ring. Very tough to fight a 26-year-old. It's kind of like a little bit of that Jake Paul argument. You get a guy that's so young, and then you're putting him up against 40, 50-year-olds. So very tough to bet against the young guy here. Zellhuber especially, he's a crazy good prospect out of Mexico. You'd hear his name, you'd think he was German or something, but no. He is a 6'1" Mexican monster. This guy's gonna. I could see it be a knockout because I think that it's gonna be a stand-and fight. But you just don't see that a lot from Zellhuber. I don't think you've seen it at all in the UFC from Zellhuber. So I'm hoping for a good fight. I think we're gonna get it. But I'm just excited to see Zellhuber back in that ring.
Yeah, this fight probably will stay on the feet there. I agree with that, Son. And Zellhuber's he's a fucking big lightweight too. Like, he's a big dude. He's able to keep his distance well. I don't see Michael Johnson really being able to explode inside range and get in the pocket too often. And when he does, Daniel Zellhuber does have some crisp striking. So I think all the stars kind of align here for Daniel Zellhuber to pick up a nice win. I know he is a pretty sizable favorite, but even if he's at minus 350, I think that's a pretty good parlay piece to throw in there. And moving on, we have Dan Ige versus the question mark that is Patricio Pitbull. In my opinion, I just can't trust Pitbull at his age. I don't know what exactly is still there. And Dan Ige has shown that he still is able to fight. He still is able to compete. He still is able to win fights. So for that reason, I'm personally going to err on the side of Dan Ige here. But Son, I'll let you take the floor from here and see what your thoughts are on Pitbull.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I really wanted to go Dan Ige here. Dan Ige's been on a tear. He's been doing really well. I think that Diego Lopez fight was kind of, an ode to how good of a fighter he really is, because, he didn't really have too many eyes on him back then. Then he took that fight, and they had a fucking banger. Arguably won that fight, but obviously there were some weird weight issues going on with fighters pulling out with Diego. Obviously that fight didn't go Dan's way. But something about Pitbull, man. I think for me, it's more I'm hoping he does well. I think it's really late in his career for him to join the UFC and try to compete with these guys. But I think Dan Ige is a guy that kind of is in the middle there. He's kind of a gatekeeper of sorts for that division. He wins good fights and then he loses against a lot of prospects, and I got a lot of guys, coming in the UFC and getting up in those rankings. And taking Yair Rodriguez to decision is, pretty impressive. Obviously, Yair's not, a slouch at all. He's a very impressive striker. He can really do anything he wants to in that cage. But him not being able to knock out Patricio Pitbull or take him out of there, I think is pretty descriptive of how durable Pitbull is. And I think you got to be durable to fight a guy like Dan Ige, who hits pretty hard, and just kind of just lets his hands go loose. So I'm really hoping that Patricio Pitbull here. I'm gonna pick him. Obviously, very old. We've mentioned a few times in this card, the age difference being something. But Dan Ige is 33. He's also not the youngest guy. I think that age plays a little bit less of a factor in this fight. And Pitbull's still active. He's stayed active for years now, and he's still a very solid fighter, obviously. So I'm hoping he gets a win because I really want him to, have a few more fights in the UFC. I'd hate for him to join in just to leave a few fights in. So I'm hoping the best for Pitbull, but definitely in my eyes, kind of not a long shot, but definitely a tough fight for him to win.
Yes, Don, I think you hit on, all the good points. Definitely the age for me. I think, Yair, that was a good fight. I think Pitbull shined a little bit in that fight. I don't think it was as dominant as people truly remember just because of the scorecards and how it ended up. But there were some moments that Pitbull shined that fight. For me, it's just like Dan Ige has been so active at the top of the division in the best promotion in the sport for however long, but especially over, like, he has 5 fights in the last 2 years. In the last year and 9 months, he has 5 fights. This will be his 6th. People forget, like, obviously, kind of a controversial stoppage, but he caught Sean Woodson. Sean Woodson was on a roll when he just knocked him out 3 months ago. Then he took, before that, LeRon Murphy to decision, like you touched on, Diego Lopez. There's the Andre Fili knockout in there, and then he did lose to Bryce Mitchell. Those are all like very formidable opponents that Dan Ige has fought. And I just think I think he is a little bit bigger than Pitbull here, and I think that's going to play a huge factor. I'm going Dan Ige here. It's hard. This is the only fight in my notes that I didn't like pick a winner because I wanted to hear what you guys had to say. I just think I'm going with Dan Ige, the guy that's been in the UFC. He's been cutting his teeth at the top of the division for quite some time. But I would not be surprised if Pitbull pulls this off. Like you said, Pitbull, regardless of the age, regardless of, just coming to the UFC, he's one of the best to ever do it in MMA. I don't think that's really, negotiable. He's up there, top 15, maybe top 20. I just think the age is a little too much, and I think Dan Ige just being in there, being tough as nails, and he's going to be in his face for 15 minutes. I think he'll fight his way to decision victory here. So I'm going Dan Ige.
Yeah, and another thing to note about 50K Ige that win over Sean Woodson, like, I know it was a bit of like a controversial stoppage. It was weird, but he was winning that fight up until that stoppage and would have gotten the nod there, in my opinion. I don't even know if that's really debatable either. And like you touched on, just fighting that top level competition where I'm more so leaning Ige over like just the question mark that is Patricio Pitbull. Like I really can't put my eggs in that basket until he proves me wrong, kind of thing here. So that's kind of where my mind's at with this one. But moving on to a welterweight bout between the most active fighter in the UFC, Kevin Holland, taking on Daniel Rodriguez. Luke, I don't want to steal all your points here. I know you're a big Holland guy, so I'll let you take the mic.
Yeah, I think maybe the last 5 fights for Kevin Holland, this is his easiest and best matchup. I think this plays perfectly into his hands. Yeah, I picked what's his face Luque against Holland last fight card that Holland fought on, and he made me eat my words. And I told myself I'm not betting against Kevin Holland ever again or picking against him ever again. He's looked great in his last 3 or his last 2. This will be his 3rd with the Gunnar Nelson decision and obviously the sub against Luque. I just think D-Rod's kind of a step down in competition for him here. I'm guessing this is just Kevin Holland telling the UFC, "Hey, I'm fighting," and they're just rolling out whoever is available because it doesn't really make sense this fight. But yeah, I think the line it's minus 410 in Kevin Holland's favor on Tapology. I think that's perfectly accurate. I don't think this one goes to decision. I think Kevin Holland gets him out rather quick, and another great performance by Kevin Holland. And we'll see him again in 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, how many times he fought this year? This is going to be his 4th fight of the year. I feel like I'm seeing Kevin Holland week in and week out, which is pretty amazing. Definitely tough to bet against him. But I will say this is a fight that I kind of looked at and I was like, I have no idea I didn't even look at the odds. I kind of just looked at the fight. I'm like, who the fuck's winning this fight? Because 2 guys are so unpredictable, right? You got Kevin Holland, who's so active. You don't know if he's going to get tired and hurt and going to be bringing in those bumps and bruises from the last fight. And Daniel Rodriguez is a guy that, especially with that Ponzinibbio fight, you really just don't know what you're going to get with him. But I am gonna go with Holland here. I think he obviously surprised us all with that Luque fight. He's been looking really good. And yeah, I'm just gonna take the wild card here. I love Kevin Holland, and I picked against him last fight, and I think he deserves my pick this week. So he's gonna get it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to make that a clean sweep for Kevin Holland. I really don't see where Daniel Rodriguez beats Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland's a lot bigger. I think he's a better striker. I think when Daniel Rodriguez goes to enter, those elbows are going to be there. Holland's a crafty striker. And if it goes to the ground, I honestly just see Kevin Holland finding a submission win. So I just can't find where Daniel Rodriguez's path to victory here is. And I do think this is a very favorable matchup for Holland, and therefore, clean sweep. Let's go, Kevin Holland, and he'll be fighting like you guys touched on in a couple months.
Yeah, before we move on, this will be Kevin Holland's 6th fight in the last 13 months.
Jesus.
That is that might be a record. I mean, not that he hasn't been doing this his whole career, but holy crap.
I think he said he wants to fight like 6 or 7 times this year. He said something crazy like at the beginning of the year where he was like, I want to take as many fights as I possibly can this year. Which is good. I mean, he's in his prime years. Like, he's 32 and he's looked really good recently. Obviously, it slid with that DeRitter fight, but he's been looking good his last 2 fights, and I'm hoping he brings it this weekend.
I mean, welterweight Kevin Holland is a bit of a problem. Like, he's been fucking good at welterweight. When he cuts down weight, he seems focused, and yeah, I see him continuing on that train here. And this is just another matchup for him. But kind of even circling back, dude, if you think about it, like, Kevin Holland's such a long time UFC vet. Like, he has to have himself negotiated a pretty damn good contract. Like, he has to be making pretty good money each time he's out there. And when you're that fucking active, like, that guy has to be making some bank, man.
For sure.
But moving on to a weird middleweight bout here. Not weird in the sense of, like, stylistically weird or anything. Just, like, matchup-wise and career trajectories here. You have Paulo Costa, who I don't believe has fought since that split decision loss to Sean Strickland, if you want to call it that, opposing the up-and-coming Roman Kopylov. Kopylov's a very fun striker here, and it's just weird looking at it where it's like it's such a big step down in competition for Paulo Costa, whereas it's such a big step up in competition for Roman Kopylov. So I guess that's kind of where the question comes into this fight. But, San, I know you're a Costa guy, so I'll hand this one off.
Yeah, Costa's been in and out of my top 5 favorite fighters. Right now, he's definitely out of it. I'm not really liking the fighting style. I think a lot of it comes down to the game plan. And I think he mentioned it after his last loss. He was like, I'm just going to throw the game plan out of the window, and I'm just going to bring back that old Costa that, you guys love to see and love to watch. Because, you look at it, right before he fought that Adesanya fight, he was just knocking dudes out left and right. He was looking like Ricky Martin out there. He's shredded up. Obviously, the dude's still in crazy shape, drinking the secret juice. But the last few performances just haven't been there. And I think he mentioned it sometime in a past interview that he had, that he's been fighting for points and he's been really trying to stick to the game plan. Whether that's true or not, He said he's going to let his hands go this weekend, and we're going to see the old Paulo Costa. I don't know if I trust him or not. Obviously, he said, I'm going to knock people out in his last like 5 fights, and it just hasn't happened. But I'm really hoping for it. I would love to see Paulo Costa back here, and I thought Kopylov was a lot younger. I thought he was, maybe 30, maybe even late 20s, but they're both the same age. They're both 34. Paulo Costa is a little bit taller, 3 inches less of reach advantage, but I think he has a huge advantage in power. And obviously, this is a pretty favorable matchup in my eyes for him because these are 2 guys that are just going to be striking and throwing hands and kicks. And if there's 2 guys doing the same thing, I'm gonna bet on the guy that's doing it a lot harder. So I'm taking Paulo Costa here, really hoping he gets him out. But I will leave with this. I hope one of them gets knocked out. Whether it's Kopylov or Costa, if Kopylov gets knocked out, Paulo Costa's back. If Paulo Costa gets knocked out, good riddance. I think he deserves it.
Yeah. Damn, son. You're making me almost want to rethink my pick. I am going to stick with my original prediction, but yeah, I think you really hit it with Costa. It's what Costa shows up, and like you said, he's been teasing that he's back and he's going to throw. I think for me, it's like when you look at his record, obviously he's fought like the tip of the top, everyone up there, but like his last win was like 3 years ago to Luke Rockhold, and even in that fight, like at the end, Luke Rockhold got him down, was like bleeding in his face and stuff, like. Obviously, Paulo should have won that fight, but it wasn't like as dominating as it should have been fighting like a 75-year-old Luke Rockhold. But I think you kind of hit it on the head. If Paulo Costa is who he says he is going into this fight, and he lets the hands go, and those kicks are working, there's not many guys on planet Earth that could sustain that for 15 minutes. My thing on Kopylov, the thing that I'm kind of favoring him, he kind of not fully reminds me. I don't want to give him too much hype, but he's got like that Izzy kind of style that we did see Costa have so much problems with back in the day. And it seems like the only people who beat Roman, I think it was only Fluffy in the UFC. He might have a loss earlier, but it was Fluffy who, complete different style than Paulo Costa. This is a tough one, man. It's one of those where like I'm only going to put 1 or 2 parlays on this because I kind of am fine with whoever wins and I want to see a good fight. I kind of, now that after hearing you talk and kind of rave about the good old days and Paulo Costa, I kind of want him to win, but I'm going to stick with Roman here. I think he's just on a track he wants to fight for the title, and I'm not really sure if Paulo's really looking at that right now. I think he's more, getting paid and trying to put on a good performance. So I think that those mentalities is why I'm leaning Roman here. So I'm going to go Roman. I would love to see someone get knocked out, but I think odds are it goes to decision.
Yeah, I'm also gonna go with Roman Kopylov here as well. He's been on a little bit of a tear recently. He had that split decision win over Cesar Almeida, and that was just a straight kickboxing. I know he ended up wrestling Cesar Almeida, but Cesar Almeida is like a legitimate top of the notch kickboxer. And then he had that knockout over Chris Curtis. And what really kind of sold it for me here was that Paulo Costa doesn't have a win over an active middleweight fighter on the roster. Like he doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Like he hasn't beaten anyone that is on the roster. So it's like, damn, dude, like it's really been a long time since we've seen Paulo Costa at that highest level. And it's really ever since that fight with Yoel Romero, which I know he got the win, but it looked like Yoel Romero. I mean, he really took him into deep waters, and then Adesanya did what he did to him, gave him the little hump, and then after that, it was like goodbye and good riddance, man. His only win has been over Luke Rockhold recently in the last 5 years. I just can't put my eggs in that basket, whereas Roman Kopylov is the young fighter trending upwards. So for those reasons being said, I am siding with Roman Kopylov. And moving on to the main event of the evening, we have a BMF title fight here between Dustin the Diamond Poirier and Max Blessed Holloway. Luke, I know Max is your favorite fighter on this planet. I'll let you start this one off. Are you riding with your boy here to get the job done?
Yeah, I think, most of the time when your favorite fighter is fighting, you look forward to it. That day's circled on your calendar. You're getting the boys together. You're buying the pay-per-view. I have the complete opposite emotions going into this. I'm dreading Saturday. Just because if you're American, even if you're not American, you just watch fights. You've been watching fights for a while. If you're around our age, in your 20s, you have to love Dustin Poirier. He's everything that, you know, you want to have him, a top guy in the division's been around forever, knocks guys out, tough as nails. I mean, Bryce Mitchell said it best. If I'm in a street fight, it's 10 against 1, give me Dustin Poirier every day of the week. And I feel that, man. I love DP. I feel like I put money on him every fight, you know, other than when he fought Max. It's just such a hard pill to swallow. But if you really look at it, I mean, Dustin, we've seen, I know the retirement everyone wants to see him say, but we've seen him kind of age. I mean, he fought Islam, but, you know, his last 2 wins are against BSD and then Michael Chandler, and those have aged very poorly in recent years. Obviously, you get the Justin Gaethje head kick knockout and Islam. Those are 2 formidable opponents that, you know, he just came up short against. But then when you look at Max Holloway, other than Ilia Topuria and Alexander Volkanovski, who has beaten Max Holloway when he's prepped for the fight? Yeah, he lost to DP when he first got in the UFC, Conor McGregor back in the day. But then he lost to Dustin when he went up to take that interim belt on short notice, and that was a good fight. The thing with Max is I still think he's in his prime, man. I still think he's getting better. I think the speed is increasing. I mean, what he put on against Justin Gaethje, I don't know how, other than, you know, maybe Islam, probably Islam and Ilia, that I don't know if there's a guy I don't think that Max could beat at, you know, at lightweight. I think the speed's getting faster. I think he's going to learn a lot from that Dustin, his last fight with Dustin. And I know people are nervous because he just got knocked out by Ilia, but in the grand scheme of things, that loss is aging well because he's the only person that wasn't dead on the canvas against Ilia. Like, yes, he got knocked out. He was definitely out of it, but he was up. He wasn't fully, you know, unconscious. And I think he's taken enough time. What was that? That was 8 months ago. I think he's taken enough time to fully recover and be ready for that fight. He's fully up at 155. I think he looks good. He looks strong. There's just no way I'm betting against my guy here. I'm going Max Holloway. It sucks. I think Dustin Poirier is going to lose and have to put the gloves in the octagon. And, you know, might shed a tear as a UFC fan. But I got to go Max here. I think he gets this done. I think the speed is going to be on full display. And he's not gassing out over 5 rounds. So there's no way I could bet against him.
Yeah.
Sorry
I'm still
for the
not.
monologue.
No, you're good, dude. Like I'm kind of in my own head right now because I really don't know who to pick here. I think we could not have more of a toss-up fight. Obviously, you know, Dustin's been getting the better of Max in their last, you know, meetings, but on the last fights. But God, they're both, you know, in such good shape right now. These guys are both looking so crazy. And they're both, you know, in their absolute primes of their career. I think Dustin Poirier is even, you know, I think this is his last fight in his prime. You know, if you were to keep fighting. But you know what? I'm gonna go Dustin here. Diamonds are forever. This dude is legit, and I think what really sold it for me was the Islam fight. He did so good against Islam. He almost took him to decision, which is not really something you see against Islam, and that was last year, beginning of last year, middle of last year. And in the meantime, you know, Max had a really brutal knockout against, you know, got knocked out pretty brutally against Ilia. And I don't know if 8 months is enough for you to recover from a guy like that. You know, you've just seen what he's been doing to all these guys left and right. I just think it's tough, you know, coming off a loss like that, getting knocked out, and then, you know, preparing for the war that's going to be fighting Dustin Poirier. I think the bullets are going to be flying. I think the hands are going to be flying. The mat's going to be bloodied up by the end of the night. It's definitely going to be a retirement fight worthy of for Dustin Poirier. But I'm just gonna, you know, put my hands in the air and say Dustin Poirier here. I really want a good retirement for him. He definitely is a guy that deserves it. And not to mention, he looks like he's in incredible shape.
He does.
He is way better, way more chiseled right now than he was against Islam. So physically, I think he's in the absolute peak of his career. And knowing that this is going to be his last fight, I think that's just, you know, the extra motivator he needs to beat a guy like Max Holloway. And yeah, it's obviously going to be a war. So we'll see how well Max recovered from getting knocked out. Obviously, it's been, you know, a decent amount of time, but you never really know how much that damage lingers for. So I'm hoping for the diamond here. I really want Poirier to go out on good terms and happily lay those gloves down on the ground.
I have a lot of thoughts about this fight in general, and it's kind of hard to think about like what order to put these out in and how this can make sense. So I guess I'll just kind of start off by saying Max Holloway, 8 months post that Ilia Topuria knockout, I think he probably has given himself enough time, hopefully. I think Max will still have a great chin. Also, moving up to 155 will help. Another thing to note, if you look at who Ilia Topuria has beaten and how he's beaten him, does this really translate to is he going to beat Dustin Poirier? No, but it's kind of an interesting statistic. Alexander Volkanovski brutally knocked out one after. Josh Emmett, he put on an absolute beating to. Knocked out Bryce Mitchell right after. Bryce Mitchell, he beat up Bryce Mitchell one after. Jai Herbert knocked him out brutally one after. Ryan Hall knocked him out brutally also one after. So, interestingly enough, like the Topuria curse is pretty weird. Like all these guys managed to win after Topuria fucking beats the piss out of them. So just a little interesting.
That's a great stat.
Yeah, it's it's fucking crazy.
Fucking bullshit, dude. I want to switch my pick.
It's pretty nuts. So if we're gonna follow the pattern that we just laid out here, Max Holloway is gonna get the dub. But really, back to reality here. Not reality as in Max isn't gonna win, because I am actually picking Max to win, and reason being here is obviously Max is more of a volume fighter than power fighter. Like you saw when he initially fought Dustin Poirier, a lot of those connections that he had, it didn't seem like it did that legitimate damage. And I think now that he has had the time to fully move up to lightweight, like when he was hitting Justin Gaethje, those shots fucking hurt. And I think when he is up at lightweight completely, those shots will hurt Dustin Poirier more than before. One thing to also note, though, on the flip side of that coin, I know Dustin Poirier said after he beat Max Holloway last time, he said the same thing where he's like, he's a rhythm fighter. He gets in these rhythms, he throws high volume. So if I mess up his rhythm, he won't be able to have the utmost success. And I mean, Max Holloway still is a rhythm fighter. So I wonder how Max Holloway will be able to game plan, look back at that last fight and kind of twist things up and see how he improves and how he comes out. But I do like the output here of Max Holloway. I do like the youth here of Max Holloway. I do think his chin will be able to hold up. And I think he has much less to lose here than Dustin Poirier as well. I think he'll be able to go out there, fight freely, try to get that one back. This is the guy who beat you in your UFC debut, beat you in that chance to get that interim belt up at lightweight. Those are two fucking losses that I know piss him off. And this is an opportunity to go and play spoiler in his home state. I think it's a great spot for him. Am I happy this fight's going on? No, but I am going to side with the Blessed Express here. Give me Max Holloway.
Yeah, I will say one thing in Dustin's defense. I did go back and watch that interim belt fight. I watched the highlights today. The Philly shell that Dustin put on against that fight, like, yeah, he was getting clipped, but he was like, I feel like for every 5 strikes, 3 of them were hitting Dustin's arms. And I know he's always been like that. So that's like, for me as a Max fan, like the biggest concern is like how much of the output is actually going to find home. And I think he did a really good job with that against Gaethje. That's what worries me. I feel like the defense for DP, you kind of hit on it with the rhythm, Zach. But I think the defense is, if his defense is as good as it was that fight, Max is going to have problems. So we'll see. But I think you can't find 2 guys that are know each other better than DP and Max, other than like Max and Volk. So it's gonna be an interesting one.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of like almost like a Gaethje Fiziev situation. They've had so many fights together. Obviously, you know that those guys have only had 2 fights together. But once you fight a guy and you beat him, you know, twice in a row, you kind of just figure out how he fights. And you fought him early in his career, and you fought him in the middle of his career. So I'm really hoping that IQ and that knowledge is really going to come into play here.
Yeah, I will say like 6 and 7 years apart, respectively, between like the first one and the second one to now the third one. So like it is a lot of time apart in between those fights. Obviously, they're the same dude stepping in there in the cage. So yeah, I'm kind of curious as well to see what adjustments both guys make. And it should be a fun fight. I kind of wish it wasn't happening, but beside the point.
Yeah, Max did say, I was watching his stream. He was like, I am on the edge of being the first guy to go 0-6 in trilogy fights. Like lose all 3 to Volk, lose all 3 to Dustin. He's like, I can't let that happen. I'm like, yeah, you can't, dude.
No, he cannot. And speaking of Dustin Poirier, we are joined by Dan DeLiza, our very own, who just put out an article about the Diamond, actually 2 of them. So Dan, I'll kind of let you take the floor from here and speak on your article and give your breakdown on DP.
Yeah, man. I mean, first things first. I mean, you know, I think on DraftKings, they should probably put out like a parlay, like what's the over under on me crying when he retires, because it's definitely going to happen for sure. That's my boy. That's my favorite fighter of all time. It's just it's crazy growing up watching somebody, and then it's all good things must come to an end. But in the first article, I kind of touched some more specifically on the Max fight, and what he did well in there and what he didn't do too well. So I'll touch on that first a little bit. The article I'm working on now is more of a comprehensive overview of his career from beginning to end, how he changed as a fighter, how he adapted, how he fixed some of his bad habits, and how he changed his fighting style and even improved against similar types of opponents. Like, for example, when he fought Khabib for the first time versus Islam. Now, I know those are two similar but also different fighters. But even in that fight, you could see that, I think one of you guys touched on it as well. Even in the later stages of his career, like right now, he's still adapting and he's still modifying his game. And while he might not be as athletic as he once was, I think he's still incredibly defensively sound. I think he counters exceptionally well. And I think what he sacrificed in terms of athleticism, he's added to his grappling game. He wasn't as easily taken down versus Islam, and he found a lot more success with scrambling back to his feet. And I mean, I'm not one to give fighters too much credit in a losing effort, but that was still insanely impressive to push a grappler as dominant as Khabib and Islam that far was insanely impressive. In the first Max fight in particular, I will say Dustin defends head strikes insanely well. He almost never gets hit clean. I think the first time we really saw him like rocked a ton of times was in his prime was versus Dan Hooker. That was probably the first time I really saw it, because he does that modified hillbilly shell he does, and he alternates between his shields very well. He'll do the Philly shell, he'll kind of move the hillbilly shell around, and even when he gets hit, he's mitigating the damage that does land. So it's incredibly, and by contrast, Dustin is incredibly accurate with his own head strikes. The majority of strikes he throws are to the head, and his accuracy is off the charts with those strikes. However, his shells, while they work, leave him a lot more vulnerable to the body. Like in the second Max fight, Max hammered a right cross to the body all night. Like when I was doing my notes, right cross the body all the time. He would flash the jab to get DP to shell up, and then he'd hammer the right cross to the body. So I think if Max can use his newfound power at 155 and really target those more vulnerable areas of Dustin, he can find success. And I liked a lot of what Dustin did in the second fight as well. He countered very well. He used his shell to kind of pick off Holloway's blows and then find a good avenue to counter. Dustin is also very good at the point of attack, specifically with his jab. And what's great about his style is that he doesn't need to be incredibly athletic, because he's already kind of in position to defend. For example, right, one of the things I noticed was that when Holloway throws a jab, all Dustin can do is kind of flick his right elbow up to deflect it. So in this way, he could kind of attack and defend. He could throw his lead right jab, and then if Holloway decides to return fire, his arm's already in position to defend. He could just angle it up. So he doesn't really need to be super athletic, super fast, because the time it takes to throw a full punch is a lot longer than it takes for Dustin to just move one of his shields 2 inches to the right or 2 inches to the left. I think in the beginning, if we're kind of segueing off the Max fights specifically, in the beginning, you really saw what I'm working on now. Like I'm talking about Poirier in the beginning as well as the end. He's in the beginning, he was very wild. It was almost like a Street Beef's final boss. He would just swing for the bleachers. He was known as an incredibly reckless finisher, and it made for an incredibly entertaining style that he carried throughout his bouts. But the problem was he just sacrificed defense in order to do so. And when he found himself facing high-level strikers like Joe Duffy was a great boxer, Conor McGregor motivated McGregor prior to was a great fighter, incredibly precise, and he took advantage of Poirier's defensive atrophies in order to land that left hook. Like for example, Poirier in the beginning when he was fighting Conor for the first time, he would just shell up in a high forearm guard like that. And when Conor threw his left straight, it would block it. It took Conor about a minute to realize all he had to do was change from a left straight to a left hook, and within a minute later, Dustin was on the floor. So after the Michael Johnson fight, I would say, is where you first finally started to see Poirier become way more defensively responsible. And coupled with a move to lightweight, which obviously helped his chin, he wasn't cutting half his body weight to make featherweight anymore. That certainly helped him. I think I'm touching on it in the article right now. The Jim Miller fight is where we kind of started to see Poirier's modern style. He utilizes the pull counter incredibly well. He doesn't do it like an Alex Pereira. Pereira is known for like pulling back and landing the left hook and all that. Poirier is more in a boxing stance the entire time, and he utilizes the pull counters off of almost everything. He did it in the Max fight off hooks. He does it off jabs. And as he throws the hook, he's also, even if he can't get his hands up in time, he's great at rolling with the shots, like against Benoit Saint Denis. Benoit hit him clean to the head with I forget what type of hook it was, but all Poirier would do was kind of lean back and turn his head to the side. So even just that is enough, at least what he can get away with. One final thing I do want to touch on. I know, I don't mean to ramble too much. Poirier uses the shift a lot. He did it heavily in the beginning of his career, and he still does it even to this day. The problem was he was something of a one-note striker in the beginning of his career, and that it was all he would do. And if you're a one-trick pony and that's all you do, eventually the opponent picks up on it. So the shift, and that article I was reading by Jack Slack also touches on this a lot. Poirier from the southpaw stance throws a left straight. He ducks his head way far in front of his hips in the beginning, which he leads with the head, basically. He just kind of steps forward. He's way out of alignment, and he kind of catches himself by stepping through to orthodox. What he's doing is, instead of just shuffling forward in southpaw, it allows him to cover distance really quick. If he could throw a big power shot, step through, and then land a right hook. What was cool about the left straight is that the purpose of it was never to land. If it lands, that's great. But all it's meant to do is push the opponent back to line up his right hook. So all he was doing with the left straight was just kind of backing his opponent up to catch them leaning back with the right hook. And it worked a lot. He used it against Diego Brandao. He used it against Medeiros. He used it against Jonathan Brookins early on in his career. And what's cool about this shift is that he doesn't, even if the opponent does not give ground and retreat from the left straight like they're supposed to, he can always crash into them with his left shoulder and force them back himself, which he did against Diego Brandao. And again, it sounds great in theory, but eventually people pick up on it, and he got kind of picked apart because, again, he's leaning so far in front that he presents his jaw on a plate to the opponent. So what he was great at later on in his career is he used it as a tool and not a style in and of itself. So the opponent was actually surprised when it came in. He wasn't doing it all the time. He would utilize it between his shifts and rolls, and he was better defensively. So he was no longer like presenting his jaw on a silver platter for the opponent. And he certainly became better with stance switches, overall defense, disguising it. What was cool is that you actually saw him mature using the shift when he took Conor down for the second time. In the second fight against Conor, he took him down fairly early in that fight, which was off of the shift. He threw the left straight, began to switch to orthodox, only instead of coming over with the right hook, he level changed and took Conor down. And even in the commentary team, they were like, wow, Conor wasn't really expecting that. So those are the things I would say that I'm kind of working on for this article. Those are some things that kind of jumped out at me. I'm sure I'm going a little bit over, so I'm going to shut up now, but that's just some things I'm working on.
Yeah, definitely a very in-depth dive into Dustin Poirier and his career, especially from a very analytical standpoint. So, yeah, I think it's a good idea to leave some for the readers to read, and make sure they go over that article on the Around the Felt Sports website. So, yeah, Dan does a phenomenal job breaking down these fights, and you almost make me want to switch up to Poirier here, but I just can't do it. But thank you very much, Dan.
Yeah, you got it, guys.
And with that being said, we're going to wrap this one up. UFC 318 coming up on Saturday. Best of luck to everyone. Oh, that's just Son right there. That's all right. Best of luck to everyone and their bets and whatnot on Saturday, but appreciate y'all for listening.
Doses.